Welcome to the People Leaders Podcast, the audio resource for managers and business leaders creating high-performing teams. Join leadership and team development experts Jan and Michelle Turkelson each week as they explore both subjects from every angle. Through practical tips, valuable insights, and compelling interviews with leadership experts around the world, you'll learn how to bring out the best in your staff and how to give your best as a leader.
So here we are again, Michelle. How are you?
Yes, Jan. Very well, very well. How are you?
Good. So this is in this time that we're recording, it's still in the COVID phase, still work from home. Restrictions are starting to slowly lift. Physical distancing is still in place and small groups can go outside. And it's really interesting, you know, for those who are listening to our podcast now, once they start to reflect on some of the things that they've been able to hold on to as part of this COVID phase, it'll be interesting which ones that they really want to use as a foundation for when they move back to work.
Oh, you've got mine, comfy clothes.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, it has been fantastic not having to suit up. That's been wonderful, actually. So, bring that in, definitely. Yeah. Very excited about our guest today, Franziska. And let me just sort of introduce Franziska. So Franziska has an amazing bio. So she's an internationally renowned speaker, entrepreneur, adventurer. She's known for her thought leadership and pushing the boundaries. And she does highly engaging keynotes, which is fantastic. Often rated as #1 female speaker and referred to as one of the smartest women in entrepreneurial space. And also Franziska was awarded the New South Wales Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award in 2013. It's fantastic. She's the author of 3 best-selling books, including Perception, How to Make Your Business Talk Aboutable, Bananas, about marketing, and how to attract a whole bunch of happy clients, and the Courage Map. Really interested in the Courage Map, actually, and the 13 principles to living boldly. And the other one that I just really want to have a side conversation with you, Franziska, is that you sit as on the judging panel for Singularity University, and you're a member of the United Nations Committee to address the UN Sustainable Development Goals through entrepreneurship. So, wow, we are so happy to have you on. Yeah, welcome.
Thank you so much. Just quickly, as you read out this fancy bio, I was thinking, well, 2 things. One was there was one thing that I'm like, 2000. So Young Entrepreneur of the Year 2013. So that's a long time ago. Also, best speaking, female. Well, it's because often I'm the only female speaker. So I definitely take the acclaim, but I do have to add a disclaimer there. Unfortunately, this is something we want to change. I am often the only female speaker, so it's a little bit easier to win that award.
Wow. And you know what, we find that as well. What is that about? That's another conversation. Is it about women putting themselves forward? Because there is just so much talent out there in in the female community. But yeah, that's another side conversation. Yeah. One that we're particularly interested in is one of your sort of keynote speeches, which is about courageous leadership. Could you, and the reason that we're particularly interested about courageous leadership right now is that this has been an issue for some of our clients in terms of, moving into working in a whole new way. And they have really had to sort of reach deep to, have the courage either to work in a different way, to challenge, to, push boundaries like they never had before. And so, really interested in your take about on courageous leadership, Franziska.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks, Michelle and Jan, obviously also for everything that you are doing here with this show and all the work that you're doing. And yes, it has been so interesting to observe courageous leadership and also the opposite in these times that we're going through in the times of crisis. And you definitely see right now which leaders are able to step into courage and to lead from that place. And then you also see the ones that are not able to do that. And you can see the difference in the teams too, where you have a leader that is courageous. And my definition of leadership and courageous leadership is having this ability to guide others and to empower them to go from A to B. And leadership for me is all about positively influence and motivate and enable, which is led by having a vision. And then management, which is what some people are doing, is controlling a group and it's all about the goal. So there's a huge difference between courageous leadership, where you lead with a vision, and then there's the managers, where it's more about the KPIs and the goals. And you need both, but you definitely right now, you need leaders that can lead with courage, because everyone is a little bit in this uncertainty. The only thing that right now is certain is uncertainty. So having leaders that are leading with courage is so important, crucial right now. And I'll quickly give you 3 components of what I believe we should consider again. And this is probably the work that you guys talk a lot about. The first one, as I mentioned, is to have this clear vision and to set a vision for your teams. Your teams at the moment might be a little bit uncertain, and we're working from home, and is this going to last, and do I still have a job tomorrow, what's going on? So lead with vision so that they are still cohesive. And I'm seeing this in my businesses, to be honest. I've had moments where I felt like the team are a little bit flapping around, and then you need to come in and just go, hey guys, this is why we're doing what we're doing, and as long as we're aligned and we all step up in the capacity that we have, we will be okay. And the leader needs to be there to guide, to give that almost North Star, to give the light. And then the second thing, of course, is the set of rules, the principles that we also as a courageous leader need to set. And this can be a collaborative effort. We've done it as a collaborative effort at Basic Bananas, where we set the principles together. However, when there is no consensus on some of your principles, somebody's going to have to make the decision, and it will probably be the leader. So I sometimes go from, okay, yes, we are a democracy, but right now, because we are not coming to a conclusion, this is a dictatorship, and the leader is going to make the decision, final decision. We have all your input. Now somebody needs to make a decision. So secondly, so vision first. Secondly, set your principles. What do you believe in? What do you stand for? And then thirdly, this is where courage comes in for leaders, is intuition. And I feel like right now, more than ever, we really need to, as leaders, use our intuition and hone our intuition, practice our intuition, because logic is not going to get us anywhere right now, because none of this stuff is logical. It's quite nonsensical, a lot of it. So logic is not going to really get us that far. So what we can rely on always is our intuition.
Oh, without a doubt, Franziska. We could start anywhere there, but in terms of the clear vision, some of our managers and leaders who are listening to this, there is that sense that, but I just manage a team of like 10 or 15 people. I don't have any lofty vision. And it's not necessarily about a lofty vision. It's about painting a picture of what moving forward looks like. It doesn't always have to be a grand vision. And then the other one on principles, Jan and I, without a doubt, feel that is so fundamental. And we encourage our people, leaders, to set a set of either team principles or a team charter with their teams. And then you're right, it is the leader that either holds them to account or leads by example every time, leading by example. And intuition, just speaking of that, if Jan and I we sort of talked about that 20 years ago, and we were, it was considered woo-woo. Like, what are they talking about? Intuition. This is a business. This is all about logic and competence. And so it's so, finally, it's great to have people talking about that and how effective.
Because it's another sense. It's another sense as a human being. We use a lot of our senses, and intuition is a sense. And to your point, Franziska, you need to practice it. And you practice it by stepping into a place of, how do I feel about this? What is my body telling me? What is the next most logical step? And have a bit of a process to step into your intuition. So does this tie in with what you call the courage effect? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the courage, and I agree with you all. And I remember when I first heard about intuition, growing up in Switzerland, we are one of the most logical societies. There was I never heard the word intuition. So when I first heard about it, I moved to Australia 15 years ago, and I probably heard about it then, and it was a bit a hippie thing. What? Yeah. This is a hippie thing. And then suddenly I realized, looking at the most incredible leaders in business too, wow, a lot of them really use their intuition. Mm-hmm. And then of course we still assess the logical side of things, but if you look at some of the most incredible leaders, they use intuition. So I agree on that. And one last thing, and then I'll answer your question on the vision bit. You have clients that would say, yeah, but I only have a team of 10, do I need this lofty vision? Your vision is not just for your team and for yourself, it's also for your customers, for your clients. They also aspire to something big. It is, and a vision is not, my vision is to buy a fancy car. No, that is not your vision in your business. It needs to be something that is, the question you need to ask is more, how are we adding value and what problems do we solve here? And it needs to be aspirational for teams and customers and suppliers and stakeholders. And then the courage effect. Yeah. You actually, I think Michelle mentioned it, or was it Jan? One of you mentioned, which is pretty much that. It's about, as a leader, it's about walking the talk. It's not so much about pointing the finger or blaming or micromanaging. It's about leading by living these principles and walking the talk. And I always say, and I talk in the book about that too, that courage is contagious. and leading with these principles is contagious naturally as a leader. And if you have team members, they look up to you, whether you know it or not, or whether you think they do or not. They do, and they will copy you. So I'm very conscious, and I don't always succeed. I'm very conscious sometimes to send lots of emails on weekends, because I work a lot on weekends, not because I have to, but because I'm so in love with what we do that it doesn't ever feel like work. So when I send emails on the weekend, I'm like, ooh, am I setting a precedent here that they are now working on weekends? And the consensus that I've come to is that you work whenever you want to work, and we are quite flexible during the week too. If you want to go surfing because the surf is really great and you're out for a few hours, it's okay too, because you'll make it up somewhere else as long as the work is being done. So the courage effect is about leading by example, not pointing the finger or forcing something onto people. And then naturally some people will fall away from your teams. Naturally some people will deselect themselves, and that's good.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about the word courage is I think the root name of it comes from French, and it's something to do with the heart. Yes. And courage for some people is actually showing a little bit of vulnerability, saying, look, I'm really not over this technology, but let's give it a go anyway, team. You know what I mean? I'm really not over Zoom or Teams or whatever, but can we try the whiteboard out? And it's being able to fail in front of your team, and that again gives them permission. And that's what courage, another example of courage as well.
Yeah. And you just mentioned, both of you mentioned teams, and Franziska, we are all about creating high performing teams. So whenever we have a special guest on like yourself that has an interest in teams, we're always interested in tips and tools and your take on that. And so particularly the engagement factor, do you have some ideas or some ways that you could share with people, that are listening to this on how to keep teams engaged?
Yeah, I can maybe share two things. So one we've already mentioned, which is definitely a vision that they feel a part of will keep them engaged in the culture. And sometimes when you feel like people start to be a little bit disengaged, it might be good to go back to see if they still want to be part of the bigger picture, and just add more why. Add more why we're doing this. If people are just doing a job for the sake of getting paid, that's a little bit of a different team environment than if they do the job, of course, to get paid, but also because they really care and they take ownership. And that's the second point on ownership is give people ownership and expect people to own their results. And you can do this by encouraging people to fail, to make mistakes, not getting upset about failures, but actually rewarding almost failures. And one of the principles that I talk about in the book, which I believe is a good one for engaged teams is the principle of imperfection. What often happens is that we as humans, as a society, we are so obsessed with perfection, and it comes often from comparing ourselves and looking at what other people are doing, and this whole comparison trap that is so detrimental to many cultures too, is to just bring that to the awareness of your teams, that there is such a thing as a comparison trap, which can lead to feeling stuck and almost being paralyzed instead of taking action. So instead, maybe as part of your culture and maybe one of your principles can be, it's one of our principles, is that mistakes are okay and they are here to teach us something. So we want to really, in a team, embrace this concept of imperfection and allow people to make mistakes and own them and learn and fall over, get back up. And I believe it was John Maxwell, he talked about failing forward. That's really what that concept is about.
Yeah, and I love your point about rewarding people when they actually do make considered mistakes, like they've actually gone through a process, because when they make a mistake, it means that they're doing something new. You know what I mean? They're doing something that is actually expanding their capability.
Exactly. And instead of always relying on you, the visual I have been using a little bit, and to be honest, we've had a little bit of this challenge going into this crisis and it's not really exactly what you want for your team, but sometimes when you have a team where you have the leader at the top and then it's almost like the kids are down here going, tweet, help, feed me. And you don't really want that. You don't want mommy or daddy and then the team. You really want people to be empowered so that they don't need mommy. They just need peers, and they come up with solutions, and they don't go, hey, mommy, I made this mistake, or what do I do now? They just come up with solutions, and they say, hey, look, Franziska, I made a little bit of a mistake here, and here's what I suggest that we do.
Oh, exactly. And it is the leader of the team that creates that environment that allows people then to step into that and to take ownership. And, it was funny because we were talking with a client running a coaching session yesterday, and she started to she started to think, oh, maybe I'm not doing a good job as a manager because somebody else is doing something a little bit different. And Jan pointed out, when you start to compare, it is a slippery slope. It's, a different context, situation, your team, what they need. And for her, it was a realisation, stop comparing because it didn't do me any good.
It's the quickest way to lose confidence.
Yeah.
So this might be a beautiful segue into your concept around bottom-up leadership. So could you give us an example of that?
Yeah, it is actually a really great segue here, because one of the leadership models that I believe in, I call bottom-up leadership. So we have top-down leadership and then bottom-up. So top-down is more when it is always a dictatorship, where it's just the leader and he's dictating everything, but also everything is on his or her shoulders. So whenever something new is happening, or a team activity, or anything to do with growth, it's on the shoulders of the leader. What you want to do instead, what is more useful and effective and helpful for leaders, is to embrace the concept of bottom-up leadership. So yes, as a leader, you might be bringing your flavor. So often you see in businesses, you bring your flavor as a leader. So the vision is often because of what you set out to do initially. Or your principles also are often reflected in your business principles. But then instead of you being the only one to bring this into the culture, is you want to get your team bottom up. You want to get your team to engage in your vision and principles and drive the culture. So one of the best things that we have done at Basic Bananas, also at the Business Hood, different companies, we have appointed a team happiness rockstar. And it's one of the best things that we have done. We did this 5-6 years ago. And this is not, in a small, medium-sized business, it's not a role that is full-time generally. You just pick the person that is the most empathetic and has compassion. And this was, for us, was Aga, our marketing manager, one of our team members. And she is the team happiness rockstar. What that role entails is organizing team activities, making sure the team is happy, checking in. It's also someone, before COVID, when we were still working from our head offices, she would check in with the team on a daily basis just to see what's the vibe, is there something going on. is someone struggling? Does someone have too much work or not enough, or even personal issues? And she would just sort of, feel it. And then she would sometimes come to us and say, hey, Franziska, I feel like maybe Heidi might be going through a little bit of a challenge, could be personal challenge. Do you want to check in with her? And then, of course, then as a leader, you might take Heidi for a coffee and just say, hey, are you okay? Do you have too much work, or do you need help with anything personally? So it's just a team happiness rockstar that is keeping the eyes on the team's pulse and the health of the team.
I love that as another check-in.
That's right. And it's almost like she's doing reconnaissance, going out there, feeling the vibe, and then bringing back, what is the best thing for you as a leader to do? Because that is a role that many leaders feel they have to take on solely. So I love the idea of actually spreading that responsibility around, but you still as a leader doing something with that instead of having to do everything from the beginning and the end.
Absolutely.
I love that.
It's amazing.
So the next question. This relates to a lot of the people that might be listening, working for large organisations. Jan and I have talked over the years about, developing your personal brand. And in Australia, there's a little bit, we recoil when we hear that word sometimes. It's like, I don't want to be showy and I don't want to, set myself apart and big note myself. However, there is something about having a reputation in an organisation. And so if you wanted to enhance your personal brand within an organisation, could you give us some ideas on how you might do that, given not everybody is an extrovert? We have some people that, don't like to necessarily attend lots of networking events and that sort of thing, but just a couple of tips that might be really helpful for people.
Yeah, definitely. And I might just give some questions that could be helpful, because I do think that personal branding is important, and personal branding needs to come from you. It needs to be authentic. And if somebody is an introvert, then it's not about turning them into an extrovert or into a ninja networker or anything like that. It's about actually embracing your strengths. And sometimes you can even make your weaknesses your strengths.
Yeah.
So, for example, for an introvert, maybe a weakness, a perceived weakness could be that they don't want to, talk to people. Well, maybe you can turn it into a strength by being a listener, by being empathetic, by hearing rather than talking. And the questions that I would start off with is just so that people get clarity on themselves first, is asking, again, similar, we have a methodology that we use in our brand consultancy. We use this for business branding, but this is so applicable for also personal brands, and we call it the brand alchemy method. And the first question again is starting with yourself as a person, asking yourself, what is your bigger picture? What is your purpose? And then secondly, what are your values? What are your principles? What do you live by personally, not in a business, but personally? And then thirdly, how do you want to be perceived? How do you want, that's your brand identity. Yeah. How do you want to be perceived? And 4 is, what is your differentiation? So number 4 is differentiation. And the question people can ask themselves is, what are my strengths?
Yeah.
What am I really good at? And then you might just focus more on that. So you might be good at one thing. You might be really good at helping people, or you might be really good at being analytical. And the more that the person can get clarity on what they're good at, the more they can bring that into the business. And then also go to the leader and say, hey, I saw here when we looked at, let's say somebody's really analytical, and they might say, hey, look, I saw here when we analyzed our social media, I realized that there's a bit of a trend. How about this? So you can suddenly take your strengths of being, say, analytical, and by the way, I'm not that analytical, I'm just using that example to propose ideas. So those are really the 4 things I would start off with the personal brand. Is number 1, what is your purpose, vision? Number 2, what are your principles, your values? Number 3, what is your identity? How do you want to be perceived? Number 4, what is your differentiation? What are your strengths that you can leverage?
I would really encourage people who are actually listening to that is to take the time to write those reflective questions, because the more self-aware you are, you'll be able to answer those questions quite clearly, and then you'll be able to see, am I living those? Am I aligned with my values and principles? And can I articulate my purpose in a way that actually gives me some energy around it? So they're wonderful questions.
You know what, it was also a really good exercise maybe for right now, if people have a bit of time to ponder these questions, is ask the identity. I want to be perceived as courageous, as cheeky, as helpful, as valuable, whatever the words are. And then, without saying anything to anyone, ask people and say, you can put on social media. And I've seen people do this. You could go even on your social channels and say, hey, I'm doing an exercise at the moment to help with branding. And I was wondering if you could just use one word to describe me. What would you say?
Great.
Yes. And then you can see if the public perception aligns with how you want to be perceived. If everybody says you're sassy, and then you think, I don't really want to be sassy, but either you do or you don't. But if you don't, then you might want to think, why am I considered sassy? Is there, do I need to change something? So it's just aligning.
We might do that, Franziska.
Yeah,
I love
that idea.
Great challenge. On our Insta. Thank you. Take that one away.
Yeah.
So Franziska, you seem to be such a action oriented person, like looking at your bio and everything that you've been able to accomplish. What are you working on at the moment that's exciting you?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I'll have a lot of energy, and I funnel it a lot into impact projects that I love working on. So really 3 key areas I'm working on at the moment. One is for Basic Bananas, which is our marketing mentoring business. Because of COVID and because of the virtuality of this world, we used to run our mentoring programs face-to-face in different countries, Australia, US, Switzerland, Canada, and New Zealand. But now, because we're running everything virtually, we can actually work with more people across the globe. So one thing I'm working on at the moment is a few Basic Bananas partners in different countries. So we just started with someone in Sweden. I had a call, and this is intuition again. These are people reaching out to us. I'm not actively seeking partners. This is normally people that have followed us and they really want to bring this to their communities, to their businesses. So we're just started in Sweden. I'm talking to someone in the Middle East, still working out whether that's a good partnership or not with the right person. That's the first thing. The second thing, which is really fun, is in line probably with what we're talking about here, is with our brand consultancy, the Business Hood. We've been fortunate to work with a few companies on their culture books. So what we do with them is we create these culture handbooks that are outlining exactly what this culture is all about in a specific business. And it's been really fun to write these and to get it out of the leaders and the team. What are you guys all about? How do you behave? How do you not behave? How do you talk? What language do you use? It's very brand specific. So that's fun. And we also obviously have one for us. And the third one is Ocean Lovers, is more of an impact organization at the moment, one of our businesses. It's just looking at what else we want to do to inspire and motivate people to save our oceans. So it's more of a bigger picture, strategic approach at the moment.
Well, I'm sure Jan could relate to that because she swims in the ocean nearly every day with turtles and you name it.
I love it. Yeah, up in Byron Bay, there's so much sea life.
That's wonderful, Franziska. Well, you've certainly given us a lot of food for thought around branding. And for me, one of the biggest takeaways was adding more why. Like why are we doing this? Like what is the actual impact? And once you can get to that, then I think that allows you to be, have a little bit more energy, perhaps when you don't feel energized, when it's beyond just you, when you're creating that impact. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, Jen, so let's wrap up. So I just want to say, I had a couple of big takeaways, and one is I love the idea of a team happiness rock star. That is something that we might just start to pepper in with some of our clients as an opportunity within each team to have something like that. And also when we do a lot of work with teams creating team agreements and principles, and I really love that idea and principle that, mistakes do teach us something. And so I'd love to now start weaving that in into some of the team agreements that we're creating with teams. So, and there was heaps more because I've got pages of notes. So it's wonderful. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And I'll send you both the Basic Bananas culture book. We are just getting it redesigned, and then you can take a look also. It might sparkle some more inspiration for you and your clients too.
Oh, great. That's what I was secretly thinking. I'd love to actually see what that book looks like, the tangibles. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. That's been wonderful. Thank you so much, Franziska. It's been very thought-provoking.
My pleasure. My absolute pleasure.
Okay, ciao.
Okay, bye.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the People Leaders Podcast. For show notes and other resources, please visit us at peopleleaderspodcast.com. While you're there, you can subscribe for future episodes so you can continue your own leadership journey. And please be sure to share this and other episodes with your friends and colleagues. The People Leaders Podcast is brought to you by the Experts On Air Podcast Network.